semua ibu bapa di luar sana memahami sikit sebanyak tentang kepentingan nutrisi untuk pastikan bahawa anak-anak remaja kita semua nanti insya-Allah tinggi generasinya nanti kan. Itu saja untuk Awani Pagi hari ini. Saya Hafiz Zaman.
Saya Fahmi Zidin. Assalamualaikum dan salam hormat.
Sebagai seorang usahawan atau pengusaha bisnes kecil dan sederhana, anda mesti sentiasa mencari ilmu, ilham atau apa jua kandungan yang dapat menambah baik atau mengembangkan bisnes anda, bukan? Jiwa SME tahun ini akan ke 5 lokasi. Zon Borneo, Zon Utara, Zon Selatan, Pantai Timur pun ada dan Kuala Lumpur. Pelbagai aktiviti akan dijalankan, termasuklah sesi perkongsian dari pakar-pakar dan influencer terpilih, workshop untuk upskill dan ruang pameran. Untuk segala info dan update, sila layari www.jiwasme.com.my. Dalam masa sama, jangan lupa untuk ikuti program khas Jiwa SME di saluran 501 Astro Awani dan semua platform media sosial Astro Awani.
Make to the trench. Early access di rumah.
It's an ancient ecosystem untouched by man. Great. More megs.
Everybody make it to the station!
That was exciting. Just a little bit.
Make to.
Masalah disiplin kan? Ponting, rosak harta benda, mencuri.
Assalamualaikum dan selamat sejahtera. Ini berita yang baru kami terima. Turki telah bersetuju supaya Malaysia Airports Holdings Berhad MAHB terus mengendalikan lapangan terbang antarabangsa Sabiha Gökçen di Istanbul. Perdana Menteri Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim berkata, persetujuan itu disampaikan sendiri oleh Presiden Turki Recep Tayyip Erdogan pada pertemuan mereka di New York pada Rabu. Menurut Anwar, Erdogan menyatakan rasa puas hati dengan kejayaan MAHB pada peringkat pertama dan mahu sambungan dengan landasan yang lebih panjang. Anwar yang berada di New York untuk menghadiri Perhimpunan Agung Pertubuhan Bangsa-Bangsa Bersatu ke-78 berkata, Turki merasakan ada keupayaan untuk operasi lapangan terbang itu dikendalikan oleh syarikat yang sama iaitu MAHB. Walaupun persetujuan operasi oleh MAHB telah diumumkan, Anwar berkata ia akan melalui proses biasa oleh kementerian yang berkenaan. Dimiliki sepenuhnya oleh MAHB, lapangan terbang tersebut merupakan pintu masuk ke-6 paling sibuk di Eropah dengan jumlah penumpang mencecah 25 juta pada 2021 yang merupakan 70% daripada angka pra-pandemik COVID-19. Malaysia dan Turki menzahirkan kebimbangan terhadap trend peningkatan kebencian, sikap tidak bertoleransi, diskriminasi dan tindakan keganasan terhadap umat Islam yang telah mencapai tahap membimbangkan terutamanya di Eropah. Dalam kenyataan bersama, Perdana Menteri Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim dan Presiden Turki Recep Tayyip Erdogan turut menggariskan kebimbangan kemunculan bentuk perkauman baharu yang dicirikan oleh xenofobia, profil negatif dan stereotip terhadap umat Islam.
Isu tersebut dibincangkan kedua-dua pemimpin dalam pertemuan empat mata seiring Perhimpunan Agung Pertubuhan Bangsa-Bangsa Bersatu UNGA ke-78 di New York pada Rabu. Mereka pada masa sama mengalu-alukan penerimaan resolusi Perhimpunan Agung PBB ke-76 untuk mengisytiharkan 15 Mac sebagai Hari Antarabangsa untuk memerangi Islamofobia yang menekankan bahawa keganasan dan ekstremisme ganas tidak boleh dikaitkan dengan mana-mana agama, kewarganegaraan, tamadun atau kumpulan etnik. Malah mereka turut mengalu-alukan perbahasan mendesak semasa sesi ke-53 Majlis Hak Asasi Manusia HRC PBB untuk membincangkan peningkatan yang membimbangkan berkait kebencian agama yang dirancang dan dimaklumkan secara terbuka seperti yang ditunjukkan melalui penghinaan berulang-ulang terhadap Al-Quran dan menerima resolusi HRC yang mentakrifkan pembakaran kitab suci sebagai tindakan kebencian agama. Kedua-dua pemimpin turut menggariskan bahawa tindakan kebencian agama, perkauman, diskriminasi dan xenofobia sedemikian telah menimbulkan ancaman kepada keamanan dan menghasut budaya keganasan. Malah Anwar dan Erdogan turut menegaskan bahawa perlunya komitmen politik di peringkat tertinggi termasuk melalui resolusi HRC PBB dan menggalakkan negara-negara memberi perhatian khusus kepada kepentingan menjenayahkan hasutan kepada keganasan berdasarkan agama atau kepercayaan. Dalam pada itu, Anwar melalui media sosial beliau memaklumkan turut menjemput Erdogan untuk mengadakan lawatan rasmi ke Malaysia sebelum hujung tahun ini. Anwar yang kini berada di New York dijadual bertemu beberapa lagi pemimpin dunia lain seiring UNGA ke-78.
Hub Gaya Hidup The Exchange TRX yang terletak di daerah kewangan antarabangsa Baharu Kuala Lumpur akan dibuka secara rasmi pada 29 November 2023 dengan kadar penghunian pada 95% ketika ini yang mewakili kira-kira 400 kedai di kawasan seluas 1.3 juta kaki persegi. Para pengunjung bakal merasai pengalaman membeli belah, menjamu selera, liburan dan hiburan yang serba dinamik. Pengarah projek The Exchange TRX dan Ketua Runcit Land Lease Malaysia, Mitch Wilson berkata, kadar penyewaan yang kukuh itu membuktikan keyakinan padu oleh jenama utama antarabangsa dan tempatan terhadap konsep runcit baharu tersebut yang diperkenalkan Land Lease kepada pasaran bersama dengan The Exchange TRX. Sebagai komponen sosial daerah kewangan antarabangsa, pihaknya telah mewujudkan ruang komunal dalam The Exchange TRX yang diharapkan dapat menjadi pemangkin kepada ekonomi yang dipacu idea yang akan dilengkapkan dengan tarikan TRX City Park, taman awam atas bumbung terbesar di Kuala Lumpur buat masa ini. Menurut kenyataan itu, The Exchange TRX akan menampilkan lanskap runcit mewah yang akan disertai peruncit utama antarabangsa termasuk Gentle Monster, jenama cermin mata canggih dari Korea Selatan dan Cebu, satu daripada gedung membeli belah terbesar di Jepun. The Exchange TRX merupakan sebahagian daripada pembangunan Tun Razak Exchange di kawasan seluas 6.9 hektar yang juga termasuk kawasan kediaman, pejabat butik dan hotel. Pembangunan itu merupakan usaha sama 60-40 antara Land Lease dari Australia dan TRX City Sendirian Berhad, pemaju induk pusat kewangan antarabangsa. AIA Group Limited hari ini mengumumkan pelantikan bekas Gubernur Bank Negara Malaysia BNM Tan Sri Nur Syamsiah Muhammad Yunus sebagai pengarah bukan eksekutif bebas dan ahli jawatan kuasa pencalonan syarikat berkuat kuasa 21 September 2023. Outcome Holdings Berhad telah mencadangkan pembelian 70 juta saham atau 18.03% kepentingan ekuiti dalam Binasat Communications Berhad dengan pertimbangan pembelian berjumlah 39.2 juta ringgit mewakili 56 sen sesaham jualan. Pelancongan Malaysia menyumbang sebanyak 14% kepada keluaran dalam negara kasar KDNK 2022 berbanding 12.8% pada 2021 dengan perbelanjaan pelancongan mencecah 92.7 bilion ringgit menurut Jabatan Perangkaan Malaysia DOSM. Laporan penuh di saluran 501 dan astrowani.com serta dagangnews.com. After several withdrawal schemes during the pandemic, the median savings of Malaysian EPF contributors have been cut in half. And with both rising costs of living and a weakening currency also weighing down on Malaysians, we want to look at what does the retirement landscape look like now, and are there more ways for Malaysians to reach their retirement goals? So in this slide, I would like to share a survey which provided several on-the-ground insights into current retirement saving and investing habits that was conducted by Asia School of Business. Alright, as you can see here, the individual monthly income, the average, the national average shows that 50% of participants have the income of average 4,000 ringgit to 12,000 ringgit, and 30% shows that participants have more than 12,000 ringgit of salaries or income per month. Meanwhile, 20% shows that participants have less than 4,000 ringgit or salaries per month, and that's on individual monthly income. And it's worth noting that while income classification is one of the measure, there are many other factors such as the number of income earners, such as household spending habits, number of dependents, and lifestyle or community factors that will affect that will help to determine if someone has disposable income to save towards retirement or not. But the question is, we want to look at what about the actual retirement savings. So next, 7% of survey participants had enough savings retirement worry-free, and these are some of the findings that I can share here. The current retirement savings, as you can see, the average shows that less than 45% has less than 100,000 ringgit of savings. And other pointers I can share is 100 and at the median of 100,000 ringgit to 500,000 ringgit, only participants have 38% of this part of retirement savings, and 7% of participants have more than 1 million. And this shows that having less than 100,000 ringgit saved meant that participants don't even meet the EPF's basic threshold of 240,000 ringgit. All right. Next is expected monthly expenses post-retirement. As you can see here, 51% of participants have expected to have 5,001 ringgit to 10,000 ringgit expenses post-retirement, and 18% expected 10,000 to N1 to 15,000 ringgit per month, and 8% expected to spend more than 15,000 ringgit per month post-retirement. Alright, now I can share to you is 48% of participants aim to rely on future savings for up to 20 years, but only 51% all participants would use up their savings in less than a year. As you can see here, even faced with this shortfall, participants were very confident in their ability to retire comfortably. If they ask, are you confident about saving retirement? 87% of them said yes, and only 30% of them said no. And they were asked also, are you likely to run out of money during retirement? 87% of them said no, and only 13% of them said yes. And when it comes to desired retirement age, 53% participants wish to retire before 60 years old, and 27% wish to retire 60 years old, and 19% of participants wish to retire after 60 years old. And to look at the age breakdown, 47% is when it comes to 30 to 39 years of age, and 22% 40 to 49 years old, 20% 25 to 29 years old, and others are 6%, 3% and 2%. Alright, So when it comes to the participants that did not know about the EPF's members investment scheme, the percentage is 75%. And this is actually worrying because if you can see here, 32% the returns, 32% knows about the return, that is the percentage is more than 8%. And if you look at this area, 20%, the minimum returns that they wish to is 3% to 5% returns, and 5% is less than 3% returns. And we would like to know more, understand better. Well, I would like to invite Wong Wai Ken, the country manager of Stashaway Malaysia. Welcome, Wong Wai Ken, to Niaga AWANI.
Morning.
All right, maybe you can share a little bit on the overview of the whole survey from Asia School of Business.
Yes, morning everyone. Happy to give you more context. So this survey was done in conjunction with the Asia School of Business, and we surveyed about 270 participants, mostly urban, i.e. living in KL, earning between 4,000 to 12,000 a month, which is actually in the M40 segment, as you can see. They're also white collar, and they have qualification, meaning they have degrees. So they are relatively well off. But it's not a given that they will necessarily retire with enough money, as you've shown. About half have less than 100,000 in EPF savings, and about 40% have between 100 to 500,000 in EPF savings. You might think that that's quite a lot, but actually, we now know with the cost of living, a couple that is wanting to retire in Kuala Lumpur needs around 800,000. So with this amount, 100,000, 500,000 is not enough, and they really need to save more to get to where they want to be.
All right, like I showed just now, only 7% survey participants had enough savings to retire worry-free, as in they had, only 7% have more than 1 million savings. Yeah. So what can you say about that?
Yeah, I think a lot of people think that 1 million is a lot of money, right? Especially when the EPF says that a minimum savings is 240,000 ringgit. But 240,000 ringgit for 20 years, that's 1,000 a month. That is below the minimum wage. So actually, new research has shown that you need around 900,000 to 1 million to retire with dignity and comfortably. So out of the participants that we surveyed, only 7% had this amount. The good news is that they are in their 30s. And if you're in your 30s and early 40s, you still have 15 to 20 years to save towards that 1 million goal, right? And I think that another thing is you need to worry about is inflation. So 1 million today is not the same as 1 million tomorrow.
And is it worrying? Should we worry with this amount of the survey that we found right now? Should we worry? And what are the steps forward that we should look into?
I think we should be aware of the situation when we start our conversation with data. So with more data, what do we do and how do we put ourselves on the right track? Not everything we have to rely on government. So if you look towards yourself, what can you do better? If you are worried, there are things you can do. For example, don't necessarily take out money from your EPF if you don't need to. Consistently put away money in your EPF and stay on track. Be aware of your spending. And you're also able to invest and save outside the EPF system. If you want to earn more than 5 to 6%, there are a lot of digital tools out there, like Stashaway, which you are able to put your money aside and then you access it only when you retire.
But what are some of the challenges? Because just now we saw the percentage of participants that wasn't even aware of the schemes provided by EPFs. But what are the challenges that stops them from having the savings, enough savings and worry-free retirement?
Yeah. So first of all, it's about earning. Earning ability is very important. If you don't have the earning ability, then if you want to put aside money for investments, there's not much to put aside. So first is really to look at your disposable income, earning more, and then spending less. I think the basics don't change. So the second thing is being aware of what options are available to you. EPF gives you a very stable 5 to 6% every year, but within the EPF system itself, you can access the members investment scheme where you can put your EPF money into qualified unit trusts to hopefully earn more than 5 to 6%. But you need to do your research in this case and look at digital channels to reduce the cost to access these unit trusts. And of course, there's nothing stopping you from putting money aside outside the EPF scheme as well. There are a lot of tools available for you, and it's about the discipline to consistently put money aside to save for your retirement.
Consistent is the key, right?
Consistency is key.
All right, but when it comes to EPF's member investment scheme, maybe you can share how does this work firstly, and how does this help those, especially the M40s, to have a better worry-free retirement in the future?
Yes. So this is one of the tools that EPF has made available to you and I to be able to grow your investment savings. So you know how you have your accounts, 1 and 2, you're able to take some of the money out for investment outside of the outside of the EPF scheme. So what EPF has done is qualified a list of unit trust providers, and you can actually look at these unit trust providers and the funds that they provide, look at the returns, look at the consistency of the returns, and make up your mind whether you want to take some money out of EPF to put into this unit trust to hopefully earn more than 5 to 6%. The good thing is the data is available. You can check the track record. And secondly, the digital tools to reach this iInvest, EPF's own digital channel, allows you to access these funds for very low fees. Fees really erode into your returns. So if you access digital channels, you can get away with close to no sales charge, and that ultimately benefits you because you enjoy more of the returns.
Okay, now we look at the current retirement savings. If you look at here, only 45% participant has less than 100,000 ringgit of savings. So how can you encourage, or how can you tell the people out there the importance of diversification of savings for their future retirements?
Yeah, so as I alluded to before, the good news is that most of the participants here are in their 30s. So we still have time. The time is there for you to use wisely. So it's about really looking at how can you improve your earning power, okay? But doesn't mean when you earn well, you will necessarily have enough to put aside for your retirement. So that's really where money management, financial literacy will feed into your retirement adequacy in later years. So once you get this money, you need really good habits. The first thing I would say is get more out of your cash. Don't just leave it sitting there in your bank account, or even worse, spend too much, right? You really want to get the most out of your cash, your savings accounts. So you should look at things like money market funds, FD products to really squeeze what you have. Anything above that, you should have a investment target. Each month you want to put 10%, 20% away for investment, and you don't touch it. And you put it there for long term, and you do what's called dollar cost averaging, which is basically putting an amount every month until you reach your investment goal. And this case is retirement, right? So if you want to go from 100,000 or 100,000 to 500,000 to, like what we said, 1 million, it doesn't just come by with a little bit of money. It comes by with a considerable amount of money for a considerable time, so that consistency and quality needs to be there.
And discipline as well.
Discipline.
And the importance of a legal investment channel. What can you say about that?
There are a lot of people who have been affected badly by scams. I think it's been widely covered that even close to $1 billion has been effectively scammed away. And we hear this all the time, not just from WhatsApp groups, but our own family members and friends. So one very easy way is to make sure you only invest with reputable sources that are regulated by SC or the Bank Negara. And doing so, make sure that these players that you invest your money in are supervised. And that way the scams can be really, really reduced. If you're safe, then your money is safe.
All right, one more important question. Yeah. This is for myself as well. How many investment channels that is too much or probably too less for especially for someone like me?
Yeah, not so long ago there was this thing on Netflix, Marie Kondo, right? She cleaned everything up.
Yep.
So you don't want too much. You want to figure out the best tool for what you're trying to do, and then only have a few. Okay, so if let's say you're looking at your savings, i.e. cash, you really want to have a tool that is just good for cash. That's one. And then you have your ASB, then you have your mortgage, then you have your insurance, then you have your investment platform. So you really need around maybe 5 to 6 platforms. You don't need 10, 20 platforms. You need the best tool for the right job.
Okay, maybe last one. What can you say to people out there especially to those who haven't started savings for their retirement, and maybe some advices that you can share to them? Absolutely.
Don't wait until it's too late. Don't wait until you're mid-40s and you've sent your kids to school, but you forgot to take care of yourself. If you're in mid-40s, you probably have 10 years before you want to retire, and it really needs to start deliberately. You need to put money aside, you need to put meaningful money aside in order to reach your targets. So be aware of what you need to do and start today.
All right, that was Wong Wai Ken, the country manager of Stashaway Malaysia. Thank you so much for coming to Niaga AWANI. This is not to scare the people out there, this is for just to remind out there the importance of your future savings for your worry-free retirement. So we're going to go for a short break. We'll be right back.
Strong and Long baharu menguatkan rambut dari akar ke hujung. Biarkan panjang. Strong and Long.
Terdapat banyak kuman yang mengancam hari ini. Kerana itu, Lifebuoy dipertingkat dengan Multivitamins Plus. Mandi menggunakan Lifebuoy dengan Multivitamins Plus baharu. 10 kali perlindungan kuman untuk kulit yang sihat. Lifebuoy
dengan Multivitamins Plus.
Lights out, full throttle, and we're underway. Then that's beautifully done on the inside of a latest Vagrant. Bagnaia on the inside of Martin into turn number 7. What a move this is. He's got Bender and Miller in front of him. How close was that? Bagnaia has this British Grand Prix covered. It's been an absolute classic.
The MotoGP, live on SPO TV.
Kastam dan Perlindungan Sempadan Amerika Syarikat membenarkan Supermax Corporation Berhad mengimport sarung tangan pakai buangnya selepas agensi tersebut menarik balik sekatan yang dikenakan ke atas syarikat tersebut. Kerugian bersih EcoWorld International Berhad menyusut kepada 12.3 juta ringgit bagi suku ketiga berakhir 31 Julai 2023 berbanding 56.7 juta ringgit berbanding suku sama pada tahun lalu. Kumpulan itu berkata, keputusan didorong oleh pertukaran mata wang asing yang timbul daripada pembayaran balik pendahuluan oleh EcoWorld Baltimore dan penukaran baki bank dalam denominasi pound sterling berbanding kerugian pertukaran asing pada suku sama tahun lalu. Sintex Berhad mencatatkan keuntungan bersih sebanyak 438.1 juta ringgit bagi tahun kewangan berakhir 31 Julai 2023 didorong pendapatan sebanyak 4.08 bilion ringgit disumbangkan peningkatan prestasi bahagian hartanahnya. Laporan penuh di saluran 501 dan ashrawani.com serta dagangnews.com. Kedai makan lazimnya diusahakan secara tradisional sejak sekian lama. Namun dalam era pemasaran digital, segmen perniagaan ini tidak terkecuali mendapat tempias. Usahawan Siti Zubaidah Muhammad Noor sebelum ini tidak menggunakan pemasaran digital untuk kedai makannya. Selama 5 tahun, beliau sifatkan sambutan adalah hambar. Namun segalanya berubah apabila dia mula memuat naik kandungan di media sosial sehingga tular.
Sebenarnya nama colek bini ni sebenarnya sebelum kita masakan panah. Okey, masakan panah jadinya kita nak berbeza je kita pada orang lain. Waktu kita ada colek. Jadi saya pun faham bisnes lo ni kena fokus ke menu gapo kita nak tarik. Jadi saya pun fokus pada colek dan saya pun buat nama colek bini tu sebab nak bagi orang rasa macam nak mari. Apa colek bini? Biasanya orang kata colek ada kaki nek, tapi kita Kelantan tu colek ni jenis makan ni. Jadinya kalau orang luar ko, ya orang dengar colek tu orang gelak dulu dan menarik orang mari dengan nama tu. Itu jadinya kita letak colek sebagai min kita, utama kita untuk menarik orang mari.
Penjenamaan yang dibuat serta muat naik kandungan menu masakan setiap hari berjaya menarik minat pelanggan. Tidak sampai setahun, restorannya dikenali ramai sehingga setiap malam hampir 500 orang berkunjung ke premisnya. Siti Zubaidah mempunyai 2 cawangan restoran culik bini dengan pertama di Machang, manakala cawangan kedua di Jalan Salur, Kota Baru. Di Jalan Salur, Kota Baru, beliau menyewa tapak dan kontena yang diubah suai sebagai bilik makan dan tempat makan. Antara menu dan masakan yang menjadi tarikan ialah colek poligami, colek bini, colek makanan laut dengan harga yang berpatutan.
Nama-nama tu memang saya fikir untuk menarik orang mari sebenarnya. Sebab saya faham dengan nama orang dengar menarik orang. Jadi orang nak tahu. Jadi saya pun create macam menu. Kita selain colek poligami, kita ada nasi goreng sutong bini tua, kita ada set tala sembuh asap, kita ada set tala abang mani, kita ada set tala adik manja, macam-macam. Menu kita memang orang kata nama saja dah memanggil. Sebab saya faham dalam bidang F&B ni menu, nama semua tu salah satu untuk tarikan orang mari. Sebelum orang siapa tu nama tu dah memanggil lah. Duk rumah dah memanggil dengan nama dah nak mari lah orang kata. Lepas saya ada jugalah kita belajar marketing nama kan dengan sifu-sifu luar-luar ada juga. Dan kita faham antara satu ni kita memang kena kuasai, walaupun kedai makan kena kuasai media sosial. Memang perlu. Semua bisnes perlu sebenarnya. Lepas saya tu saya mulalah bergiat dari kita mula masuk dalam bidang sosial, mula dengan page. Kata free kan? Free sebenarnya, online ni free. Jangan fikir dulu. Saya tak fikir dulu untuk mula dengan berbayar. Mula dengan free. Iaitu saya saya buka page dan juga saya live. Saya live tu masa orang kata sebelum PKP. Dan alhamdulillah dalam PKP tu jugalah, walaupun kata orang sakit, saya tak sakit mana. Sebab apa? Saya boleh jual. Sebab dengan live tu lah. Live order masuk, saya pergi COD. Saya mula dengan live lah, dengan zero cost marketing lah saya buat masa tu. Selepas tu dah kita naik, dah kita ada juga ada bahagian untuk marketing, baru saya mula hire orang influencer.
Perniagaan kedai makan atau restoran turut memerlukan pengiklanan dan ruang itu digunakan Siti Zubaidah dengan mewujudkan kumpulan media sosial dari kalangan kaki tangannya.
Kalau saya lah, kalau post dalam page tu wajib minimum 3 kali sehari. Okey, kedai kita. Dan untuk TikTok minimum 3 kali juga. Dan live pun 3 kali. Budak macam saya lah ni, dulu saya mula dengan saya. Tapi dah ada team, kita dah ada team marketing TikTok, jadinya kita hire demo lah. Kadang-kadang kita muncul dalam TikTok. Jadinya susun. Kalau page pun 3 kali sehari minimum. Dan juga untuk TikTok pun video kita 3 kali sehari wajib untuk kita orang kata kena post benda tu. Kita kedai makan dia tak sama juga macam kata brand-brand produk lain. Okey, kita perlu selalu 2 sahaja untuk buat TikTok saja. Okey, dan juga untuk page saya hire macam orang kata ausah dah. Saya hire ausah. Kadang-kadang kita nak fikir mana kepakaran kita. Kalau kita tak pakar, jangan kita pandai-pandai buat tak jadi. Ada jenis saya hire orang kata pakar lah. Mana saya boleh buat, saya buat. Ada mana tim kita mampu, di situ pun tim kita belajar. Kita suruh, kita hire orang dan kita belajar.
Siti Zubaidah mempunyai hampir 80 pekerja di 2 restorannya dengan pelanggannya mencecah hampir 1,000 pelanggan pada hujung minggu. Dan menyentuh soal persaingan, setiap perniagaan tidak terlepas dari pelbagai saingan termasuklah kandungan di media sosial.
Selain menu, okey, kita kalau kita nak menjual semua tak boleh juga. Bermaksud dalam contoh 3 kali sehari tu, 3 kali untuk kita post hari menu salah satu. Kita cerita menu kita, contoh udang galah 7 HC ni, gapo sedap dengan udang besar tak, dengan udang fresh. Dan juga satu lagi resepi pun boleh. Resepi, lepas tu suasana kedai kita boleh cerita. Bukan ada menjual saja, kena bagi manfaat pada orang luar jugalah. Menarik minat dia, follow kita dan juga boleh mari. Tak menjual jugalah. Menjual tu menjual, tapi dalam satu video kita ada satu menjual. Yang lain tu kita bagi manfaat kepada orang lain. Menu petua ataupun lokasi-lokasi mana special di Kelantan, di Aceh, di Kota Baru gitu saya buat biasanya. Bajet saya untuk marketing biasanya 10% pada sale. Kadang-kadang lebih, kadang-kadang kurang. Tengok. Jadi kita akan susun lah. Kita akan duduk dengan tim kita. Kita akan cari influencer mana hotline tengah trending. Dan juga tengok konten-konten dia menarik dok orang mari.
Persatuan atau komuniti usahawan berperanan penting dalam membantu dan memfasilitasi PMKS tempatan untuk terus melangkah maju dan bersaing di peringkat global. Expo China ASEAN CAEXPO ke-20 di Nanning, China merupakan platform penting bagi PMKS tempatan menyerlah dan meluaskan pasaran mereka. Kita ikuti perkongsian wartawan Firdaus Azil.
Okey, baik. Antara tunjang ekonomi madani yang diperkenalkan oleh Perdana Menteri Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim baru-baru ini adalah untuk membawa kita punya perusahaan terutamanya dalam kategori perusahaan kecil sederhana PKS dan juga mungkin merangkumi juga segmen mikro iaitu MSME, yang mana antara tunjangnya ataupun antara visi ekonomi madani ialah untuk membawa MSME dan juga termasuk PKS ini ke peringkat global. Tetapi kalau kita mencerakin data yang dikeluarkan oleh agensi berkaitan yang menunjukkan bahawa PKS ini, segmen PKS ini hanya menyumbang sekadar 38% untuk keluaran dalam negara kasar KDNK. Jadi kalau mungkin untuk kita lebih memahami bagaimanakah cara, kerana kita sering diberitahu, sering dimaklumkan bahawa SME ini bukan satu segmen yang sebagai engine growth yang perlu mengembangkan lagi ekonomi Malaysia. Jadi bersama dengan saya ialah Datuk Seri Abu Hassan Muhammad Noor yang merupakan pengerusi atau Presiden Dewan Perniagaan Usahawan Malaysia, yang mana satu ketika dahulu dikenali
Dewan
sebagai
Perniagaan Usahawan Kecil
Malaysia. Jadi dia dah naik ke besar. Ini sejajar dengan visi untuk mengembangkan lagi peranan PKS ini daripada kecil menjadi lebih peringkat global. Jadi kita di sini kita berada di Nanning, China. Kita berada di Nanning, China untuk mengikuti China ASEAN Expo kali ke-20 yang mana semalam telah diserikan lagi dengan kehadiran Perdana Menteri Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim. Dan kalau boleh juga saya nak menyebut tentang antara intipati ucapan ataupun ucap pertama Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim semalam ialah bagaimana ataupun pada Ahad ialah bagaimana China ASEAN Expo ini perlu menjadi pemangkin untuk supaya PKS Malaysia ini dapat merentasi, dapat mengembangkan perniagaan bukan sahaja ke peringkat ASEAN tetapi jika kena caranya akan ke peringkat global. Jadi pertamanya Datuk Seri, kita nak memahami visi ekonomi madani itu ataupun aspirasi ekonomi madani dan bagaimana PKS Malaysia yang kita tahu pelbagai jenis, terutamanya saya kira yang paling besar dalam sektor F&B. Bagaimana PKS ini perlu menyahut cabaran itu?
Terima kasih Awani datang juga ke Nanning bersama dengan YB Perdana Menteri kita yang telah dirasmikan cara rasmi dia semalam bersama dengan Perdana Menteri China. Dan juga bersama dengan Tengku Zafrul, Menteri MITI. Saya dapat tahu. Jadi Alhamdulillah SME ini sejajar daripada perkembangan yang PM bagi tahu semalam, usahawan madani, Malaysia Madani. Kita sebenarnya dah buat pengeluaran SME ini sejak daripada 2013 lagi di China. Di China merata seluruh, saya rasa separuh di negara China ni kita dah terokai di bawah SME. Dan ada yang kita melalui kementerian, agensi dan juga ada yang melalui kita sendiri je pergi. Yang tidak ada bantuan mana-mana, yang kita bergerak sendiri dan kita tahu permintaan di sini tu terlalu tinggi. Daripada contoh dia lambakan daripada SME produk usahawan kita ni memang diperlukan di sini. Jadi itu sebab kita pelopori, kita terokai di China ni. Jiwa kita memang jiwa SME yang kita tahu luar dalam dia jauh dekat turun naik ranjau duri dia semua kita tahu. Jadi kita nak membesarkan lagi. KDNK tadi 35%. Export ready lebih kurang 15%.
Okey, export ready tu 15%. Maksudnya apa Datuk Seri?
Export ready ni maknanya segala syarikat-syarikat di Malaysia yang besar-besar ni pencapaian dia tidak kata orang membanggakan. Sehingga baru 15%. Macam mana lonjakan tadi, impak ni kita nak naikkan lagi sampai ke 30%, sampai ke 35%, sampai 50%. Bagaimana cara dia? Jadi itu sebab kita datang ke Nanning untuk lonjakkan lagi daripada segi ekonomi negara, SME tadi, PKS, SME, macam mana kita nak naikkan imej kita. Jadi itu sebab kita datang ke sini untuk pamerkan produk-produk, pertama sekali SME. Kita ada ready to eat, rendang, kita ada dendeng, kita ada krepek, kopok. Dulu kopok krepek ke dekat kampung, juara kampung, sekarang dah masuk international dengan labeling, packaging yang menarik, yang kata orang tu rebranding dengan halal, dengan HACCP dia, dengan musti dia, dengan ada semua bagai kita hantar ke luar negara. Jadi lonjakan tu kita nak penuhi.
Export readiness maksudnya apabila ada order, kita dah sedia untuk dihantar.
dia.
Tetapi disebabkan kalau kita tengok seperti Datuk Sri sebutkan agak rendah, maksudnya dia order kita tak sempat nak ready. Jadi di peringkat di negara kita, maksud readiness itu bagaimana kita nak memastikan SME you ada order ni tetapi you kalau you tak ready, bagaimana peranan dewan nak make sure memberi garis panduan yang betul. Untuk readiness maksudnya dah ada stok. Jadi bagaimana kaedah-kaedah?
Itu sebab kita ini adalah satu platform. Dewan ni ditubuhkan untuk membantu agensi dan kerajaan. Platform. Maknanya kita yang grassroots, kita turun padang, kita tengok usahawan kita daripada belakang rumah, tepi rumah, kecil-kecilan ni dan kita bawa dia sampai ke besar. Jadi kita channelkan kepada agensi dan kementerian untuk meneruskan usahawan kita daripada segi bantuan, dana, program, daripada segi mesin-mesin yang lebih canggih. Kan? Kata orang sekarang ni kalau ada World International Machinery di Guangzhou, lebih kurang mesin tu lebih besar-besar, lebih kurang satu mesin dia kalau nak production, macam contoh dia kita nak buat karipap frozen, ini mesin dia sekali keluar lebih kurang dalam 3,000, 4,000 satu hari. Ada sebulan katalah barulah kita boleh pergi yang order yang besar-besar. Boleh kita main kontainer. Sini main kontainer je. Dia nak 2 kontainer sebulan, 5 kontainer. Jadi kalau ada mesin-mesin yang lebih canggih di Malaysia tu, saya rasa lebih memudahkan usahawan kita untuk pergi ekspor ke luar negara.
Jadi maksudnya kena ada kilang pemprosesan yang lebih besar untuk cater ataupun memenuhi volume ini. Tetapi of course itu kos tu.
Okey, itu sebab saya dalam libat urus baru-baru ni, saya dengan KKWD, Kementerian Kemajuan Desa Wilayah. Saya dah syorkan kepada TPM sendiri. Kalau TPM tengok video ni, saya kata anjurkan satu one stop center. One stop center dikelilingi oleh IKS dan dengan ada warehouse sendiri. Jadi production dia kita tadi akan lambatkan kita di one warehouse tadi. Di Malaysia tak ada. Yang ada pun contoh dia di Kima, yang capacity pun saya dah bawa negara China pergi ke situ, tak sampai capai dia punya KPI. Jadi ini sebab bila Malaysia Madani ni contoh, kita perlukan yang lebih advance, lebih kata orang telur lebih baik lagi dia punya pasarana infra dia. Saya syorkan one stop center. Saya pergi di mana-mana merata di Indonesia, di China di sendiri lebih besar lah, saya rasa jauh ketinggalan. Tetapi di Malaysia ni kena ada satu tadi tu industri, dikelilingi oleh industri dan juga one stop center, pengumpulan produk-produk IKS tadi. Jadi production dia tadi luar bandar, seluruh pelusuk bandar ni tadi, dua bandar ni akan kumpulkan di situ dengan production dia sendiri. Jadi senang.
Jadi maksudnya Datuk Sri, kita kena saya dah ada produk, tetapi mungkin sebabkan kalau saya nak memenuhi, katalah saya boleh sebulan mungkin saya boleh buat dalam 1,000 karipap, frozen karipap, tetapi ada permintaan tu mungkin 10,000. Jadi saya memerlukan kilang pemprosesan, warehouse. Jadi maksudnya Datuk Sri, kita kena melihat balik ekosistem yang menyokong pertumbuhan SME ni, Datuk Sri.
Betul macam tu. Jadi sekarang ni kita tak nak kais pagi makan pagi. Orang kata kais pagi mandi cukuplah sekadar kemampuan kita. Kita tak boleh nak ni. Tapi kita nak pergi ke negara maju sekarang. Negara kata orang lebih advance dan lebih bersaing, daya saing dengan negara luar. Contoh dia minat produk karipap tadi di Malaysia. Dia akan datang. Dia tengok daripada segi pembuatan sistem infra dengan apa semua, memang halal Malaysia ni memang terkenal, memang dunia tahu, memang terbaik, memang bersih, suci, bermutu macam itulah. Jadi yang ini dia orang kejarkan, dia orang nakkan. Jadi lambatkan produk kita ni, kita boleh perbanyakkan seluruh pelusuk Malaysia tadi untuk ambil karipap tadi untuk kumpulkan dengan standardized, dengan yang sama, dan satu machinery yang besar di one stop center itu untuk production. Jadi pengeluaran tu tadi semua akan seimbang, serata, semua akan dapat market.
Tetapi kalau kita bercakap tentang daya, saya nak menyentuh mengenai mungkin daripada psychologicalnya, daripada psyche ataupun daripada attitude-nya. Katalah saya ni pada mulanya saya membawa kancil. Kemudian saya membuat satu produk perniagaan, akhirnya saya berjaya membeli satu wira second hand pula tu. Tetapi saya rasa itu dah cukup memadai. Sedangkan kalau ikutkan saya punya trajectory, saya boleh membawa mungkin lebih kereta yang lebih cepat, Honda ke maybe sampai Mercedes ke. Tetapi dengan sikap complacent. Saya rasa saya dah cukup lah. Kan, dah cukup. Jadi bagaimana kita nak menolak bahawa SME ini bukannya sekadar, ia adalah satu berangkaian. Kita nak membawa SME ini ke peringkat global. Apabila enjin SME kita ni menjadi lebih kukuh, maka dia akan menolak ekonomi. Tetapi bagaimana kita nak menarik SME ini, saya tak kata semua SME, ada yang berjaya, tetapi kita nak menarik sebahagian besar untuk keluar daripada kepompong keselesaan tu, Datuk Sri.
Okey. Dia macam inilah, kita dalam dunia perniagaan ni, kita kena berusaha, kena gigih, kena percepatkan lagi. Jadi kita tak nak cakap juara kampung sajalah, ataupun saya cukuplah untuk ni. Sebab apabila dah permintaan tu terlampau tinggi, jadi kita kena ambil benda ni sebagai opportunity dalam bisnes. Maknanya peluang-peluang perniagaan. Yang ni yang kita nak rebut. Apabila dapat tawaran ataupun MOU sepahaman daripada negara luar untuk permintaan tadi itu untuk diperbesarkan, daripada kancil tadi bolehlah pergi kereta yang lebih ni sebab ada metafora ataupun sekarang ni dah panggil apa, dia panggil apa yang pakai
charging station ni, kereta elektrik
betul, lebih advance lagi kan. Jadi cara macam tu kita kena rebut. Usahawan ni kita tidak pilih bangsa dan keturunan. Kita kena bersama. Dalam masyarakat madani tadi, usahawan madani, kita kerjasama jadi satu network yang besar. Dia network besar daripada 1,000 tadi produce, jadi lebih banyak lagi keluaran dia. Jadi bila peratusan tu lagi meningkat. Kan? Jadi kita tak nak contoh dia Cik Timah ni buat karipap, Cik Bedah pun buat karipap. Kita longgokkan. Jadikan sama KPI dia, sama sistem yang sama. Jadi production tu akan lagi lebih banyak. Jadi mungkin sebulan tu dia boleh produce 50,000 pieces, 100,000. Ni semua networking. Jadi kita tak mau cakap you punya business, I punya business. Dia kena satu tim, baru boleh pergi besar.
Ini peranan yang perlu diambil oleh Dewan Perniagaan. Saya kira ada berapa belas ribu di bawah Dewan Perniagaan perusahaan ini, usahawan ini, dan saya kira macam-macam PL.
Macam-macam. Jadi ranjau dulu, tapi tak apa. Ini satu pengalaman dan pembelajaran. Dalam 10 tu 2 ada yang kata kan cukuplah dia macam ni kan. Jadi yang 8 tu mungkin nak pergi jauh. Ada yang 2 tu bila dah berjaya pun dia tak ingat kita dah. Pun ada. Melayu mudah lupa tu memang betul lah. Tetapi daripada sini kita pecahkan kepompong. Kita jangan jadi usahawan baru. Usahawan kata orang yang nak lonjakkan tu daripada segi bisnes. Bukan dia F&B saja, daripada segala macam. Daripada servis, perkhidmatan, daripada segi production, daripada segi import dan export ni kita kan lebihkan. Contoh dia itu sebab tujuan kita membawa usahawan-usahawan ke sini, kita buka peluang. Nampakkan dulu. Kalau dia walaupun dia first time ataupun baru dah biasa datang pun, tapi kadang-kadang benda ni tak dapat lagi. Dia punya mood tu tak dapat lagi. Tapi bila dia dah tahu, dia dah selam, dia dah nampak market ni besar sebenarnya, dia akan berusaha lah. Walau macam mana pun. Walaupun Dewan ni dah, saya rasa dah 2013 ditubuhkan sehingga sekarang, belum pernah ada bantuan mana-mana lagi. Tidak pernah di kementerian, tidak pernah. Tapi usahawan kita memang ada bantu. Di Dewan sendiri tak ada. Kita bergerak sendiri. Kita createkan pengusaha tadi, kita createkan sistem, kita createkan pembelajaran. Macam mana kita nak meningkat mutu kan usahawan kecil ni pergi ke besar. Itu yang platform Dewan. Mutu kita nak jayakan. Kita nak usahakan sampai dia berjaya. Kan, tak ada ketinggalan langsung. Jangan dia kata, saya pernah pengalaman kita bawa kat sini, baru dia tahu, maknanya lebih luas dia punya pengalaman. Bukan sekadar di Malaysia saja. Dia nampak, walaupun dia pergi negara mana pun, negara maju, di Dubai, di mana expo besar, di UK, kita kena tunjukkan, baru dia nampak.
Okey, kita nak mungkin memberi gambaran sedikit lah Datuk Sri. Banyak PKS, MSME juga datang ke China ASEAN Expo ini, yang memang tiap-tiap tahun anjurannya di Nanning. Di Nanning, tapi kalau boleh kita nak tunjukkan pada ni bagaimana market China ataupun Nanning itu sendiri. Okey, sekarang ni di Nanning ada berapa juta penduduk?
Nanning saja kita ada 7.4 juta.
7.4 juta penduduk.
Nanning saja, Nanning saja. Dia campur lah. Dia ada Muslim, Chinese Muslim, macam kita juga. Dan di negeri dia ada 15 juta.
Jadi Nanning ni adalah ibu negeri?
Guangxi.
Okey.
Guangxi negeri dia. Dia ibu negeri Nanning. Dia ada lebih kurang 15 juta.
15 juta.
15. Jadi kalau 1%, 2% pun takkanlah tak nak tengok barang kita di Malaysia ni. Macam semalam saya pergi kan. Saya rasa nak berjalan pun susah sebab pack jalan tu. Di pavilion Malaysia sendiri, lebih kurang 100 pavilion, pack dengan orang. Takkanlah 1-2 tidak ada minat langsung dengan produk Malaysia. Saya rasa mustahil. Tapi mungkin nanti boleh berdiskusi dengan dia orang macam mana pandangan dia. Saya rasa dia orang rasa macam terharu. Kalau yang first time datang, rasa dia orang terkejut dengan cara persembahan di sini. Dia tak perlu pun selebriti pun datang.
Betul.
Lambakan dia memang ramai sangat. Memang sungguh ramai. Itu baru di Nanning saja. Kita ada beberapa daerah di China, lebih kurang 1.3 bilion penduduk. Jadi kapasiti di Malaysia tu kita kena standby.
Itu
daripada segi
export ready.
Export ready. Kita kena standby daripada segi mesin-mesin yang kata orang tu yang kapasiti yang boleh menampung untuk pergi ekspor. Contoh di F&B. Lambakan F&B ni terlampau banyak di Malaysia. Lambakan orang ni buat produk, orang ni buat produk, orang ni buat kesihatan, orang ni buat F&B, orang ni. Tapi ke mana pergi kalau kita tidak masuk pasaran luar antarabangsa dunia ni, ASEAN contoh dia. Jadi ini yang kita perlu lihat. Sebab di Nanning ni bukan di China, bukan orang Cina aja yang berniaga. Kita ada Singapura, kita ada Brunei, kita ada Vietnam, kita ada Cambodia yang sama-sama mempamerkan produk masing-masing. Kan? Kita ada kalau you datang ke sana tengok ada produk macam bukan F&B saja, daripada tenunan, daripada aksesoris, daripada kayu-kayan, daripada produk-produk yang lain. Semua negara luar pun ada. Tetapi bila di Malaysia ni memang terkenal F&B kita. Memang disukai oleh masyarakat Cina.
Okey. Kita dah ada produk. Kita ada SME. SME kita pun alhamdulillah dengan pertolongan platform-platform seperti Dewan Perniagaan Usahawan Malaysia ini berkembang, ada caranya. Tetapi sudah pasti apabila kita nak memasuki negara lain, kita juga memerlukan hubunganlah G2G. Jadi sektor memperkasakan SME ini seringkali acap kali diutarakan oleh kepimpinan, termasuk sekarang ni yang antara teras di dalam visi ekonomi madani. Dan tetapi dari segi birokrasinya sering juga saya mendengar ada kekangan-kekangan yang menyukarkan SME ini untuk berkembang ke tahap yang seterusnya, Tok Sri.
Ya, tapi saya mohonlah kepada agensi dan kementerian, birokrasi itu kita kurangkan. Sekarang ni kita pun dah ada pemerintahan baru Malaysia dalam perpaduan Malaysia. Jadi berbilang kaum ya. Dan juga terutama sekali saya nak tekankan yang bumi putera kita terlalu jauh ya untuk kita perbesarkan. Jadi kalau tidak ada agensi dan kementerian ataupun platform dewan ni, dia orang tak tahu nak ke mana.
Betul.
Ya. Dan kita pula sebagai usahawan, kita jangan terlalu mengharap. Kita mengharap dana, kita harapkan bantuan, baru kita nak bergerak. Kalau tak ada bantuan, tak ada dana, dia tak nak buat program. Walaupun produk dia dah terhebat dekat dunia ni. Tetapi ini sebenarnya kita kena tengok pencapaian KDNK dan export ready itu mesti kita nak penuhi. Ya, kalau kita tidak ada tenaga dan semangat yang tinggi. Ya. Jadi saya syorkan untuk agensi dan kementerian dan juga perbankan di Malaysia ni longgar-longgarkanlah sikit. Ya. Kalau dia katalah dia ada sitor dan sikris yang untuk membantutkan perniagaan ini, saya kata you tengok balik, cek balik. Mungkin
potensinya
potensi ada. Mungkin dia punya salah pencaturan, salah apa, you cek balik. Dan juga di agensi kementerian dana dan geran berbilion-bilion. Saya dengar sampai 40 bilion pun ada. Yang baru ni pun marah ada 100 juta masuk dalam ni di bawah disalurkan di bawah bank muamalat, di bawah bank rakyat, kita kena perbetulkan dan kita percepatkan supaya SME kebantutan dia tak ada. Jadi apa yang ada program tu kita berikan segera untuk tindakan lanjut. Tapi kita tak nak nanti kepimpinan terutama sekali Perdana Menteri menjadi melembabkan agensi dan kementerian dan juga kabinet-kabinet yang lain, menteri-menteri yang lain. Kita tak nak. Jadi kita syorkan, cek balik, semak balik dia punya peraturan, sistem. Janganlah sampai tebal-tebal nak isi borang, nak isi renyah. Jadi sekarang ni semua dah di China ni tak ada dah paperless semua. Semua main scan, main kata orang QR code dengan apa. Walaupun bayar RMB, 5 RMB pun kena pakai QR. WeChat lah sistem dia. Jadi kita pun kena macam tu. Kena pergi ke negara walaupun Malaysia baru 33 juta, sini dah 1.3. Macam mana jauh dia punya ni. Jadi negara kecil lebih senang manage daripada yang besar.
Sepatutnya. Secara on paper lebih senang.
On paper kan lebih mudah. Ini saya syorkan untuk percepatkan dan juga sistem yang ada sekarang ni kita permudahkan. Jangan kita lengahkan. Itu saya mohonlah kepada agensi dan kementerian. Dan juga kalau PM tengok ni, dengar ni. Jadi Malaysia Madani itu fungsi dia apa dan cara macam manakah untuk kita naikkan taraf SME, terutama sekali orang kita yang jauh ketinggalan. Yang dia kata miskin tega, yang kata asnaf.
Katanya nak notahkan kemiskinan.
Macam nak notah kemiskinan, nak notahkan tu macam mana kita nak upgradekan kehidupan dan Persaraan dia orang masa akan datang.
Baik, bersama dengan saya ialah Datuk Seri Abu Hassan Muhammad Noor yang merupakan Presiden Dewan Perniagaan Usahawan Malaysia yang banyak memberi kita insight, maklumat tentang dunia usahawan ini dan bagaimana cara untuk kita menolak lebih memperkasakan sektor SME sebagai enjin pertumbuhan ekonomi Malaysia. Jadi buat masa ini itu saja yang saya boleh kongsikan sempena kedatangan saya ke Nanning, China ini untuk mengikuti China ASEAN Expo. Terima kasih.
Baik, kita akan teruskan dengan melihat prestasi ringgit berbanding US dollar dan setakat jam 6 petang Rabu, mata wang tempatan naik kepada 4.684 dolar. Namun bagi prestasi pembukaan pagi ini, ia berada pada paras 4.69 pada setakat jam 9.55 dan ini ia diupdate di Trading Economics pada pagi ini setakat jam 9.55 dan kalau kita bandingkan secara purata ataupun secara dasarnya dalam seminggu, kita dapat lihat paras mata wang berada dalam kadar 4.6 mata berbanding dolar Amerika. Dan kalau kita lihat seterusnya itu tentang prestasi ringgit dan ini tentang Bursa Malaysia pula. Bursa Malaysia ditutup rendah untuk hari ketiga berturut-turut dalam persekitaran prestasi serantau yang sebahagian besarnya negatif kata penganalisis dan pada 5 petang FTSE Bursa Malaysia KLCI atau FBM KLCI merosot 6.10 mata kepada 1451.56. Namun untuk pembukaan pagi ini FBM KLCI berada pada paras, kalau saya dapat buka di sini, berada pada paras 1450.05, turun 1.51 mata dan 0.10%. Kalau anda dapat lihat di sini dalam jangka masa 5 hari FBM KLCI berada di paras sekitar 1450 dan 1460 dan itu berkenaan dengan Bursa Malaysia. Dan sekarang kita akan beralih kepada US markets. Kalau saya boleh bahasa Inggeris, US stocks slumped on Wednesday after the US Federal Reserve held key interest rates unchanged as widely expected and revised economic projections higher with warnings that the battle against inflation was far from over. The Dow Jones fell 76.85 points to 34,440. The S&P 500 lost 41.75 points to 4,402 and the Nasdaq dropped 209.06 points to 13,469.13. And among the 11 major sectors of the S&P 500, interest rate sensitive communication services and technology suffered the largest percentage losses. And now let's take a look at some of the counter. Alright, what I can see here is the sea of red when it comes to technology, communications and also some of the healthcare sector. And when we look at Microsoft especially, if I can show you here, it losses 2.40%, and the reason why is Microsoft presentation from 2022 showed how the company could quickly grow revenue from mobile purchases and advertising over the next few years, and the Activision Blizzard deal would give Microsoft a leg up in those categories. And executives in 2022 predicted gaming growth would come from advertising and mobile purchases over the next several years, according to documents recently published on a card website. And the disclosure seen in a Microsoft presentation from May 2020 is the latest bit of inside information to trickle out as a result of the software makers' battle against the Federal Trade Commission over the pending Activision and Blizzard acquisition. All right, that's about Microsoft. Moving on, we want to look at Oracle. Oracle is up by 0.09%. And the reason why is Oracle said on Tuesday that it would use Ampere Computing's flagship processor chips in its cloud computing service, and a boost to the chip company that has filed for an initial public offering. And Ampere, which was founded by former Intel executives, designs chips for a holding outsourced to TSMC. And Ampere aimed to create chips that are designed to be more energy efficient than traditional processors from Intel and Advanced Micro Devices, both of which have subsequently announced offerings that compete with Ampere's chips, and that's Oracle. Moving on, we want to look at Nvidia. It lost 2.94% this morning, and the reason why is Nvidia has been the stock market's brightest shining star this year. Following the successful launch of ChatGPT last December, companies have rushed to launch their own artificial intelligence initiatives, and while generative AI applications that are available broadly today focus mainly on searching, digesting and creating content, AI's benefits could reshape many industries, and the flurry of investment in AI has created a surge in demand for faster and more energy efficient chips that can process data better and more cheaply. And existing network infrastructure relies primarily on central processing unit computing power that's ill-equipped to train and operate AI applications. So sales of Nvidia's fastest graphics processing unit, the H100, are soaring, and each H100 chip costs as much as $40,000. Nvidia's sales and profit have taken off. Okay, that's Nvidia's. Moving on, we want to look at Google. Google, as you can see, it's the color is red as well, and is down by 3.05%. And Alphabet's Google on Tuesday made a last-ditch effort to Europe's top court of overturn a 2.42 billion euro antitrust fine imposed for market abuse related to its shopping service, and saying that regulators failed to show that its practices were anti-competitive. And Google turned to the Court of Justice of the European Union after the General Court in 2021 threw out its challenge to the fine levied by EU antitrust chief Margrethe Vestager in 2017. And it was the first of 3 penalties for anti-competitive practices that have cost Google 8.25 billion euros in total in the last decade. And Google lawyer Thomas Graf said the European Commission had failed to show that the company's different treatment of rivals was abusive, and that different treatment alone was not anti-competitive. And that's on technology and Google communications. And next we want to look at Meta. If I can show you here, Meta, it is down by 1.77%, and this is due to the announcement it is expanding Meta Verified to businesses after the first launching it for creators in March. And the company is initially testing the verification program on Facebook and Instagram with merchants in select geographies, but it plans to roll it out to businesses on WhatsApp at a later stage. And businesses can purchase a subscription to Meta Verified at $21.99 per month Facebook page or Instagram account, and they can also pay $34.99 per month for both. The company didn't disclose pricing for verification on WhatsApp. So we can go for a short break, and we'll be right back after this with Ibrahim Sani.
Magnum Matcha Crumble baru. Aiskrim matcha lembut, saludan coklat tebal, dan cebisan biskut rangup. Magnum Matcha Crumble baru. Magnum, kenikmatan sejati.
Ada drama yang merungkai misteri tersembunyi.
It's not about basketball. It's about winning. Better watch out.
Kisah pengembaraan hebat.
I am Puss in Boots.
Okay.
There's something out there calling to me.
Hayalan.
Not be the prince, you gotta kiss the prince.
Malah pembunuhan.
Gotta get her talk. We can just girl talk.
You guys okay out here?
Hey, Mama. Yeah, we're like work and...
I don't think so.
Di mana jua bila-bila masa anda perlukan seorang wira.
He's done it again!
Dengan hanya satu klik, stream pelbagai kisah dan wira-wira hebat di satu tempat. Astro baru, switch sekarang.
Kiev menganggarkan Rusia menghantar lebih 400,000 askar di kawasan yang dikawalnya di timur dan selatan Ukraine.
Sekitar 8,000 kes kehilangan kad pengenalan MyCard direkodkan di seluruh negara setiap tahun.
MCMC telah mengadakan perbincangan kawal selia dengan platform dalam talian terkemuka iaitu Meta dan Google bagi menangani cabaran media dalam talian.
Ikuti perkembangan terkini. Buletin Awani 12:30 hari.
Di sini, segala kisah original umpama hidup.
Welcome back, kawan.
Di sini, segala karakter original membawa anda ke pelbagai tempat. Di sini, segala cerita original umpama nyata.
You feel good?
It felt so real.
Idea baru, cara baru.
Di sini, Home of Originals.
Sayang siul lagu ni.
Dan lebih banyak lagi untuk anda terukai bila-bila masa, di mana jua. Stream on demand dan Astro Premier di saluran 410. Make 2 The Trench. Early access di rumah.
It's an ancient ecosystem untouched by man. Great. More megs.
Everybody back into the station!
That was exciting, just a little bit.
Make 2 The Trench. Early access di rumah. Sewa dan stream on demand atau sil ke saluran 480.
Thanks for joining us. My name is Ibrahim Sani. Let's take a look at the big news coming in from the US. The United States Federal Reserve held interest rates steady in the current 5.25% to 5.50% range on Wednesday, but stiffened a hawkish monetary policy stance that its officials increasingly believe can succeed in lowering inflation without wrecking the economy or leading to large job losses in the US. The Fed's benchmark overnight interest rate may still be lifted one more time this year to a peak of 5.5% to 5.75% range, according to updated quarterly projections released by the US Central Bank, and rates kept significantly tighter through 2024 next year than previously expected. Fed Chair Jerome Powell, after the end of a two-day monetary policy meeting, said they sketched a stricter policy path moving forward in an inflation fight they now see lasting into 2026. But a solid economy with still strong job growth will allow the central bank to keep that additional pressure on financial conditions through 2025 with much less of a cost to the economy and to the labour market than in previous US inflation battles. Indeed, monetary policy is expected to remain slightly restrictive into the next 3 years, while the economy continues to largely grow at its estimated trend of around 1.8%. Even as inflation declines for the rest of this year and in coming years, the Fed anticipates only modest initial reductions to its policy rate. That means the expected half percentage point of rate cuts in next year would have the net effect of raising the inflation adjusted to quote-unquote real rate. So to unpack this further, joining us from Singapore is Tariq Horchani, Head of Dealing Prime Brokerage at Maybank Securities. Tariq, let's talk a little bit more about the US Federal Reserve decision. Since March 2022, they have indeed pursued a more aggressive campaign to starve basically demand. Do you think the rate hike is practically done for this year, or are you part of that consensus that might see a one-time rate hike towards the end of this year?
Good morning. I think you have made good points. We need to look carefully at the data to be able to answer this question. Now, the Fed expects growth to be at 2.1% year on year in 2023 versus 1% that they were expecting in June. And it also expects the unemployment rate to end the year at 3.8%, which is lower than their projection in June that was at 4.1%. Also in inflation, slightly higher than what they were predicting. The only positive thing that I see here is the core PC inflation projection now is a bit lower by 20 basis points at 3.7%. There are definitely a big change in wording from the Fed, important combo from like strong economic growth versus moderate that we saw in June, and tight labor market conditions, and they still see the labor market conditions as strong versus the word robust that they used in the previous FOMC statement. So the consequence of that is the dot plot, which now signals another hike of 25 basis points before the end of the year. And also they have done projections for next year to be a slower pace of cut rates in 2024 and 2025, which is a big change from June, where we were expecting 100 basis point cut. Now it's only 50 to 75 basis point cut in 2024. So I expect the Fed actually to raise rates one more time by the end of the year. I don't agree with some of the economists who are saying that the Fed will cut 100 basis points next year. I think with the growth at more than 2% and inflation at this level, it's still too high to see massive rate cuts from the Fed next year. So I expect probably cuts to start in the middle of next year, and maybe much less than what the market is expecting, with inflations that will remain above the 2% target.
Tariq, the FOMC said in a statement this morning that it included projections that inflation rate remains elevated, basically incorporating strong economic growth and looking at job growth that could remain strong. So what does it mean if growth is stronger than predicted, and how do you think this factors into that decision of the rate possibly hiking one more time this year?
It's a very good question, and it's the most difficult for the Fed to answer. The growth projections now have been raised to 2.1% versus 1.5%, and it was and 1.5% next year, and from 1.1%. So it's the most difficult situation because the Powell thinks that at a growth rate above 1.8%. Is not going to be disinflationary. So we need to have growth below 1.8% to be able to see the pace of inflation to slow down. And this will help the Fed to justify that raising interest rates is taking an effect on the economy. But it's not the case. Economy is very resilient. So that's also why they're looking at probably raising rates one more time, and could be maybe another time after that. We will see if it's just the effect on rates is still taking a very slow pace to have an effect on growth. So, I mean, you have a good point. It will be a difficult decision for the Fed, and we will need to see growth to go lower to be able to see a change of stance from the Fed and start to talk about rate cuts.
Let's look at the trend of the inflation rate right now, because the federal fund rate falling to 5.1% projected at the end of next year, 3.9% by the end of 2025. And central bank's main measure of inflation is projected to drop to 3.3% by the end of this year, to 2.5% next year, and 2.2% by 2025. All this is, of course, a trend. So the Fed expects to get its inflation rate back to its 2% target by 2026. Let's be realistic here. Do you think that can be achieved? And what can we read from the inflation forecast following the hold on this particular interest rate this morning?
I mean, you see the Fed, our members are all weighting their inflation forecast on the upside, taking a new view that the risk of growth and unemployment rates to be broadly balanced. The direct consequence, like we talked about a bit earlier, is a dot plot shows that the rate cut won't be as strong as what it was predicted in June 2023. Will inflation go to 2%? I don't think so. With wages that have increased, with companies where employees were still looking to get their wages higher, sticky inflation, oil price at above $90. I don't think we will reach that level of 2%. I think we can reach closer to 2%, maybe 2.5%. But we have to put things in our head that we are in a new paradigm for inflation. We're never going to go back to zero inflation rate. There's the sticky inflation, the wage growth is, unless we see a recession, which means a lot of layoffs and then a reset of the economy with lower salaries. I don't believe the market is labor market is still tight, so we are very far from this point. So I don't believe that we'll reach this 2% target. That's why I think that the rates will remain elevated for a longer period of time.
Now let's talk a little bit more about the US labor market. Driving here, I was listening to a podcast about a possible strike by the auto workers industry. There's a continued strike on the Writers Guild Association or labor union. And of course, we're looking at the labor market being cooling off right now, signaling fresh headwinds, including resumption of student loan debts, repayments, government shutdown possibility. Because of all this, what can we read from this, particularly from the domestic market within the US, and how do you think this will play into this whole idea of the Fed holding rates this morning?
I mean, the mention of the auto strike is an important element to consider. The sticky inflation that represents wage growth is slowing down, which is also why the economy is very resilient from 6.6% year on year in March 2022 to 4.3% today. But some industries like the auto want to benefit from a record profit that we have seen post-COVID with a stronger demand, higher prices, and they're asking for a pay rise of 30% over 4 years. The biggest issues now up for the negotiations involve the level of pay hikes and benefits for workers. The 3 automakers have proposed 20% raises over the next 4.5 years. But it's quite far away from what the unions is asking for. So with this sticky inflation, the main worries now for the government is that this strike spreads to other industries, and more want to benefit from the stronger demand that we have seen in the US the past year. Regarding the student loan repayment, this will have a big effect on the impact on the economy. I call it the shark loans of the US, with accrued interest restarting that could, for me, trigger the next financial crisis and have a huge impact on the economy. Student loans borrowers, for info, represent around $1.63 trillion in federal student loan debt. Consequence is that young Americans were the driver of this resilient economy, as shown with stronger consumer spending, and the start of the loan repayment in October will reduce the annualized GDP growth in the fourth quarter to about 0.2%, which is quite significant. So I guess it will help the Fed to push down GDP toward the 1.8%, 2% that they want, but probably for the wrong reasons. Okay. And the full and likely government shutdown at the end of the month is highly likely now. It's going to be difficult to pass a new budget after what they have tried to do in June. Also, this will probably push U.S. growth down by 0.2%. By the end of the year, if we have this shutdown, but I don't think it's going to be a major impact on the stock market, though. So, I mean, like you mentioned rightfully, there's still a lot of uncertainty around this growth path and consumer spending between the government strikes, the government shutdown, auto strikes, loan repayments, and so on.
Tariq Rochani, Head of Dealing Prime Brokerage at Maybank Securities Singapore, joins us. Tariq, let's focus on Asia right now. What about the impact on Asian markets and Asian central banks? We saw Bank Negara here in Malaysia held the interest rate for 2 times, if I'm not mistaken. What would be some of the impact when we look at some of the Asian markets and Southeast Asian markets? Do you feel that they're going to react to a non-reaction to this holding of this interest rate?
I don't think so. I think a lot of economies in Southeast Asia, I mean, partly, but a lot of it is driven also by the Chinese economy, which is in a different path from the US. They are more on the cut cycle, subsidies, trying to revive this growth that has been slowing down for a while now. So I don't think it will be a major impact. I don't think that one more hike will affect too much some of the Asian economies, but definitely the stock market will be impacted. I mean, we have seen Nasdaq down 1%, 1.53% yesterday. So the stock market this morning has been lower. So there will be some impact, but we're really in the middle between US and what's happening in China and the slowing pace of growth in the Chinese economy. Also a big impact on the real estate sector in China that is also affecting what we could see potentially in Southeast Asia. So yes and no, that will be my answer. It's probably not the best answer, but it's really, we are in the middle of this fight between the Chinese economy slowing down and the US economy that is quite robust.
Okay, let's instead pivot that question. Let's look at Treasury yields, for instance, because it hit a 16-year high ahead of the Fed meeting. Because of this, it does provide some opportunities for the fixed income business to actually attract more investors locally and abroad. Do you feel that there would be a greater interest in Treasury yields, Treasury products right now amongst Asian markets to get into the US Treasury?
Definitely. We are in the 2-year at the level that we have not seen since 2006. For the 10-year, we are at level seen in 2007. The curve is quite steep. I don't think it's going to change anytime soon. There's probably more room to go for the 10-year yield and move higher than where we are now at 4.4%. Probably getting closer to the 5% level. So in terms of risk as an investor, definitely there's a strong interest to go into treasuries. There is some interest to go into investment grade, but going into high yield, the price that you have to pay for high yield compared to what you can get in treasuries is not amazing. So with this type of rates in treasury, the demand will continue to be strong and should be stronger. And even deposit rates at some point will have to move higher. In Southeast Asia, I mean, Singapore in particular is moving along with the US rates. So definitely investors will be more either cash driven or treasury driven or go for high quality names under the corporate bond space.
And of course, when you draw the, I guess, comparison between China and the US and how the Asian markets are practically slapped in between, there's a lot of corporates within China, for instance, that might look for going for listing. There are corporates around the world that is looking for listings as well, signaling perhaps the IPO age is coming back after a very poor pandemic kind of moment. Having said that, the Nasdaq and the New York Stock Exchange is in a fight for closest listings contest in 5 years. We saw Birkenstock IPO that's going to be made very soon. Instacart, for instance, has surged 12%. Any thoughts on this, particularly when it comes to the IPO listing in the US, for instance?
I think it's going to continue. I mean, we mentioned that the economy is robust. Institutional investors have a lot of cash to deploy. I mean, we saw Instacart was 23 times oversubscribed. ARM also was very oversubscribed. Personally, I think that there will be more emphasis on the technology sector and especially around the AI ecosystem. There are a lot of companies like Google Venture, Microsoft, HP invested heavily into this microprocessing companies in the US, which are private at the moment, so from Series B to Series E, but also AI-driven companies, iRobots, and so on. All these companies will do IPO in the next 1, 2, 3 years, and they will be massive. We are talking about a few $1 billion for each one of them in terms of market cap. The demand will be very strong. The demand from institutional investors into the space that, for me, is going to change the world will remain very strong as well. So I expect actually the Nasdaq to benefit a lot from it. There will be probably more also repercussions on other types of industries, but I am a strong believer that AI will drive this IPO world and ecosystem for the next 2 to 3 years.
Sorry, what do you mean by AI driving this ecosystem? Do you mean like corporates leveraging on AI technology, or the two stock markets are trying to push through AI improvements on getting or attracting corporates to list on their particular bourse? Which one is it?
Yeah, a bit of both. There will be a strong demand for AI products. So companies that already exist that will want to integrate AI components into their products. So there will be new companies offering this kind of new products. The microprocessors as well are developing. An example I can give you is photonic microprocessors that allow more data to go through these microprocessors. And this is especially driven for AI that requires a lot of data analytics. Machine learning also will continue to develop. And I see new services that are going to get provided to banks, to retail companies that are going to drive the market in the next 2 to 3 years. Exactly. So it's a bit of both. New product and already existing companies that will integrate more AI into their processes.
Do you feel that it's going to be attracting a lot of private funds into this space as well, private equity, venture capital, to actually boost the kind of development onto these corporates before they go for listing? Or do you think that that whole idea of investment winter is upon us right now? Definitely.
I mean, I have connections in Silicon Valley. Just Google Venture or the private equity arm of Microsoft is investing heavily in this kind of companies at valuation at $600 million to $1 billion for private companies in this space. And I'm talking in 2023. So it just gives you an idea of what kind of valuation we can get when they start to go IPO in the next 2 to 3 years.
Still on equities, I want to push back to Asia because major Asian equity markets rallied last week but remained flattish over the past 3 days following the Fed, waiting for the Fed decision. Of course, all the markets are now opening up today. Emerging currencies were mixed after market beating economic data from China, for instance, added the expectations that global central banks were close to being done with their tightening cycle. Do you feel that, say for instance in Singapore, the market where you're literally at right now, is going to be a little bit more robust? Because Singapore itself, I saw the stock kind of closed flattish yesterday. Do you think that might, because of the decision that has been achieved right now by the US and with China's industrial production and retail sales now beating estimates, there's going to be a lot more invigoration in terms of investors trying to see what they can get, say for instance in the Singapore market or some other Southeast Asian market? Where do you feel the appetite when it comes to investors in Southeast Asia when it comes to equities?
For demand for Southeast Asia markets is been growing this year. The performance probably is not as strong as what we have seen in the US. Definitely, I mean, the market here is still driven a lot by a few factors, by what we see in China, definitely, and the US. The hedge funds investing in Southeast Asia have not had the best performance, but they are much better than what they had last year, and actually most of them are making money. Japan has been very strong in Asia, at least this year. in terms of equity market. Also driven by the tech space. Anything related to AI in Taiwan, Japan has been overperforming. For Southeast Asia, you have pockets of good performers. It's still quite mild compared to what we have seen early this year in the US, but definitely there will be some kind of shift anyway. There's been some kind of shifts from North Asia to Southeast Asia that we have noticed since the start of the year. This will continue, especially with the consumer spending and the robust economy that we still have in the US. This will have a positive impact on Southeast Asia overall. So I'm quite positive
very quick one.
For Southeast Asia.
Very quick one, Tariq. The semiconductor war, so to speak. What's your view on this? Do you think that this is going to continue on, or do you think that things are already stabilizing between the US and China when it comes to the semiconductor war?
It will continue. It's just the start. This, like I mentioned, and with AI and what's going to happen in terms of IPO in the next 2 to 3 years, is heavily driven by also the microprocessor development, and China wants to be a part of it. They're trying to develop it by themselves. It's difficult. The Taiwan-China relationship also will have a major impact on that, and the geopolitical risk around this, for me, is only going to increase. Fantastic. So this is just the start.
All right. Thank you very much, Tariq. That was Tariq Horchani, Head of Dealing Prime Brokerage at Maybank Securities Singapore. Continue to stay with us on Astro Awani, but for now, I'm calling it a day. My name is Ibrahim Sani. Catch you in the next one.